I'm very pleased to join the webinar that Cash and 4 per thousand are organizing jointly at the GSP Plenary Assembly in Rome on 13th of July. I would like to talk about soil health for food and climate. How can Cash and 4 per thousand work together in promoting soil health? It's a good idea to look at the greenhouse gas concentrations, which at the moment is about 420 parts per million. And at the same time, methane and nitrous oxide have also increased tremendously, such as since 1750, increase of CO2 almost 150%, the CH4 about 262%, and nitrous oxide 124%. Annual increase about 2.5 parts per million, or CO2 11 parts per billion, or methane 1.2 parts per billion, per nitrous oxide. So there's a tremendous increase because of the human activity. Keeling curve indicates that the January 23 concentration for 19 parts per million compared with 412 parts per million in January 2020, and tremendous increase since 1960 from about 315 parts per million to more than 420 parts per million at present. Therefore, the question is, how can soil be used as a sink of carbon? And the carbon in soil is two types: organic carbon, the upper part of the soil horizon, and in the arid, semi-arid regions, the lower part and even more dominant part of carbon stock in the soil is inorganic carbon, both the calcium carbonate and bicarbonates. And the calcium carbonate formed through soil processes called pedogenic or secondary carbonates is, of course, a sink of atmospheric CO2. The soil carbon pool consists of two parts, as I mentioned, in the topsoil organic and the subsoil inorganic part. And the organic part have different fractions: live fraction, undecomposed, decomposed. Decomposed can be protected, unprotected, including the dissolved organic carbon, particulate, and the macroorganic carbon. And of course, the inorganic carbon, pedogenic and lithogenic. And the inorganic and organic are interconnected because of the decomposition of CO2, production of CO2 through decomposition in soil and formation of pedogenic carbonates. So that's the link between the two. The short-term carbon cycle shows in 2021, 10 gigaton per year of emission from fossil fuel combustion, leading to increase in atmospheric concentration stock of 5.3 gigaton out of 10 gigaton total emission, plus also 1.1 gigaton emission from land use conversion and deforestation. And this very short-term active carbon cycle indicates progressive increase in carbon stock in the atmosphere because of not only fossil fuel combustion, but also land use conversion and soil and other agricultural activities. If we look at the decadal carbon budget from 1960 to 2022, the fossil fuel combustion in 1960s was 3 gigaton, in 1922, 10 gigaton. Land use change has more or less stayed the same, but really decreased from 1.4 gigaton per year in the 60s to 1.1 in 2022. The total anthropogenic emission ranging from 4.5 in the 60s to 11.1 at present. The interesting part is what is the percent of the land-based sink because of the anthropogenic emission. The land-based sink in 1960s was 1.3 gigaton out of 4.5 total, and in 2022 through the land-based sink is 3.4 gigaton out of a total of 11.1. And this part needs to be looked at critically, that how can the uptake by land, as summarized here, from 1.2 to 3.4, how this uptake can be increased even. The land-based sink currently are about 30.6% of the total anthropogenic emission in 22 being absorbed by the land. And if you look at the total sink capacity, which is land and ocean, they both together, so that the remaining is the atmosphere. Total sink capacity has also ranged between 51%, that the combined land and ocean together, to about 58% in 57% in 2022. If we take the total emissions so far since the Industrial Revolution, 700 gigaton total, of which land-based sink, the land and ocean, natural sinks, have absorbed 415 gigaton. That means 58% of the total. So the question is, how can the natural sink capacity, especially that of the land, which means soil health, can be increased to absorb anthropogenic emissions more than they are being absorbed now? That brings us to the question of nature positive agriculture, which is specifically designed for protecting, managing, and restoring soil health, recarbonizing the soil and the vegetation. Remember, we have emitted total of 700 gigaton. That's a total, quite a lot, of which agricultural land use is a significant amount, improving water quality and renewability, adopting negative emission farming, reducing input of chemicals, using biostimulants and organic amendments, promoting a biocircular economy, supporting the One Health concept, using digital innovation such as precision agriculture, and rewarding farmers for ecosystem services such as carbon sequestration, so that we can also promote education, strengthen soil and environment as a component of the curricula at all levels, beginning from the primary school. Root system of perennial cereals is a very important component that can improve soil health on the basis of increase in soil carbon stock. And the plant architects have to be such that we not only have a high harvest index, as was the case with short-statured Green Revolution varieties, but also the plant should have very high deep root system. And this deep root system will contribute tremendously to increasing carbon stock in the soil, and therefore make soil as a sink, not only in the surface layer, but in the deeper soil horizon, so that the mean residence time is more. That would involve creating soil positive carbon budget, both soil and ecosystem, in such a way that the gains of carbon in the soil by a range of practices such as biochar, compost, cover crop, root biomass crop residues are always more than the losses. And this is how the law of return is then practiced, that whatever we take from soil is put back into the soil in one manner or the other. While this is the ideal situation, unfortunately, in many countries, especially developing countries where the resource poor farmers dominate, the gains are not always more than the losses. In fact, it's the other way around. Gains are generally less than the losses. Therefore, soils are losing carbon. And we must reverse this process of soil carbon depletion to soil carbon sequestration by improving soil health and increasing activity and species diversity of biota in the soil, because soil is a living entity. The estimate shows that 25% of all living organisms are in the soil. The habitat is the soil where those organisms live. Therefore, thinking that the green revolution of the 60s could be revisited, so rather than based on improved varieties and inputs, the green revolution of the 21st century should be based on soil resilience, eco-efficiency, and science and management innovative technologies. That brings us to the question of soil health. Soil health refers to soil's capacity as a dynamic and biologically active entity within natural and managed landscapes to sustain multiple ecosystem services, including net primary productivity, food and nutrition security, biodiversity, water purification and renewability, carbon sequestration, air quality and atmospheric chemistry, and elemental cycling for both human well-being and nature conservancy. That brings us to the question of regenerative agriculture. Regenerative agriculture is a philosophy, it's a concept, it's an idea, it is a strategy. It's a strategy which is inspired by eco-innovation, it's powered by non-carbon energy, it's driven by a circular economy and green infrastructure, and it's supported by the recarbonization of the terrestrial biosphere as the bedrock of sustainable development. And there are many practices which would come under the idea of regenerative agriculture. With these adoption, the rate of carbon sequestration varies according to the ecosystem. Wetland can really sequester 1.5 tons of carbon per hectare per year. Set aside land, CRP, such as Conservation Reserve Program, afforestation, can sequester in soil about 1 ton per hectare. Turf lawns and management, including the sports fields such as golf courses, can sequester about 0.5. No-till, really from 0.3 to 0.5 megagram of carbon per hectare per year. In some cases more, especially in the cooler and moist climate. And rangeland, which is normally dry and warm, hot climate, may sequester about 100 kilograms of carbon per hectare per year. The concept of farming carbon is which can create another income stream for farmer. Carbon can be either bought and sold and traded, or the income can be generated through payment for ecosystem services. There are several options, and this concept of improving policies which are pro-nature, pro-farmer, and pro-agriculture is a very good strategy to translate science into action and to build bridges across nation. We had a great honor when I was president of International Union of Soil Science that we recognized tremendous contribution by Mr. Stefan Lafol, the former Minister of Agriculture and Forestry of France, when 4 per mil, 4 per thousand program was initiated under his guidance and leadership. IUS has rewarded him with the Distinguished Service Medal. And because of his initiative on 4 per mil, because of the Food System Summit outcome of cash, that Leanne will be talking to you more, we think that the technical potential carbon sequestration in soil is about 2.5 petagram of carbon per year, with a range of about 1.5 to 3.4 petagram of carbon. And the cumulative potential between 2020 and 2100, soils of the world can absorb, under ideal condition, 178 petagram, and vegetation about 155, with a total cumulative accumulation of 330 gigaton, which translates into CO2 drawdown of about 157 parts per million. Therefore, the 4 per mil and cash program, together with the other innovation, really can still limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade or no more than 2 degrees centigrade, provided that we pay farmer for ecosystem services at the societal value of carbon, which is about $130 per megagram of carbon. That translates to $35 per ton of CO2, or 1 nickel, 5 US cents per pound. So if a farmer sequesters half a ton of carbon per hectare, that's $65 per hectare, $26 per acre. If it's sequestered 1/3 ton, then farmers should be rewarded $43 per hectare, or perhaps $18 per acre. Creating an international food bank, similar to IMF, might be a good strategy to mitigate hunger and malnutrition, according to the Sustainable Development Goal Agenda 2030, number 2. Therefore, at the same time, it might mean saving land for nature. That brings us the question of how do you feed the world by 2050? World already produces enough food to feed 10 billion people. Thus, the food and nutrition security must be achieved by reducing waste, increasing access to food by addressing poverty, inequality, civil strife, and political instability, improving distribution, increasing use of pulses and plant-based diet, accepting personal responsibility of not taking things for granted, and increasing productivity from existing land, restoring degraded land, increasing biological nitrogen fixation by legumes, protecting prime land against urbanization and brick making, and returning some agriculturally marginal land back to nature through the strategy of eco-intensification and restoration of soil health. If we were to do this possible agenda between 2020 and 2100, may lead to a reduction in the use of chemical fertilizer from 200 million ton now to 50 million ton by 2100. Irrigated land area may be increased from 350 million hectare now to perhaps 500 million hectare by 2100. However, the cropland area must decrease from 1500 million hectare now to no more than 750 million hectare by 2100. Conservation agriculture, however, must increase from 200 million hectare now to all cropland of 750 million hectare by 2100 under conservation agriculture. The grazing land, which is 3.7 billion hectare now, should be reduced to 1.5 billion hectare by 2100. Water use in agriculture through drip fertigation, sub-drip fertigation. Water use right now is 3,150 kilometer cube per year. It should decrease to less than 1/3 by 2100 to 1,000 kilometer cube. Yet the irrigated area will increase because we are improving the use efficiency. If we did all the innovative option, the grain yield of cereal could be doubled between now, which is 4 ton per hectare globally, to about 8 megagram per hectare by 2100. This is a vision, this is a goal for which we should encourage younger generation to build connection with science and improve adoption of innovative options. That brings me to the last slide of sharing with you a poem by Will Allen Dromgoole. His poem puts that vision very nicely, and it goes something like this. An old man going down a lone highway came at the evening cold and grey to a chasm vast and deep and wide, through which was flowing a sullen tide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The sullen stream had no fear for him. But he turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, said a friendly pilgrim near, you're wasting your strength in building here. Your journey will end with the ending day. You never again shall pass this way. You have crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build this bridge at eventide? The builder lifted his old grey head, Good friend in the path have come, he said. There followed after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This chasm that has been a knot to me, to that fair-haired youth might a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I'm building this bridge for him. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Leanne. Have a great meeting. Goodbye.